We're talking about Buttigieg having someone like Warren as a professor.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's a level of bitterness towards Warren. Like he gives her these evil stares. Like, I don't have. I wish I had the time to like go back through all the debates and just capture those moments where he stares at her like he hates her guts. And I there's something there, man. I don't know because he's not pointing it. He's not targeting it anywhere else. I think you're absolutely right in terms of the data. It is weird to see that overlap. I really want to ask those supporters of Warren that left her and went to Pete, like, what the hell do you stand for anyway? Like, what is it that you saw? Because there's a divide, right? I think Warren obviously is not as far to the left as I would want her to be on Medicare for all. One of the reasons I am not supporting her as openly as I would have is because she backed away from it. But there's a clear divide between people who are willing. There's two people on that stage who's willing to try something bigger and better. That's Warren and most certainly Bernie Sanders. Everybody else is literally making the case for keeping everything the same or giving you $1,000 a month. Other than that, everyone wants to keep everything the same. And so my question to those supporters are like, what is it that you see in Buttigieg that will make you go from Warren to Buttigieg? On top of the fact that he's giving your candidate like the evil eye on a level that says that there's some deep-seated hatred there. So what I may never get that answer, but I do really want to beg the question.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. And I think it also shows the dynamic of basically these primaries. We all just assume that, because I guess, it sort of is the case with Bernie Sanders, where, if you come out as a Bernie Sanders, if you say, you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, I believe it's something like 75% of his supporters say they are sticking with him and they're not looking at any other candidate. Whereas I think every other candidate is like, I think Biden maybe has like something like 50s or high 40s, and everyone else is like in the 20s and 30s percentile. It's
Yeah.
like, it's I guess it's foreign to us in terms of uh, being able to just jump from candidate to candidate like that. But I guess the Democratic base just doesn't really look at the candidates that way. I mean, it bears out the fact that policy isn't always first to some people. Some people
Yeah,
just look
that's
at
true.
some people just look at who can beat Trump. Really.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Under no circumstances is it reasonable to think Pete Buttigieg can beat Trump, right? Even more so, Joe Biden. Now, I did say I would pick Joe Biden over Pete Buttigieg, but I think Joe Biden has the least chance on that stage of beating Donald Trump. I think Amy Klobuchar has a better chance because it really will come down to those really small moments in the debate, and people will change their mind, obviously, like you just discussed, at the drop of a dime based on how they perform in the debate. And Joe Biden, notwithstanding, he did an okay job tonight. He didn't completely collapse, right? But he's not going to do well with Donald Trump. So it's like this argument of electability. How the hell are you still thinking that Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump when he can barely survive this stage where everyone is trying to be nice to him?
Right. Now let's talk about. And to me, this put a damper on the debate for me because I feel like the moderators tonight did a much better job than some of the other debates. But this was just like it was just like to get a snipe in to look like you were you had a witty comeback or something. It's the moment where the question is posed about, basically it's framed in a way where they pointed out that Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, two candidates of color, were no longer on the debate stage, and only Andrew Yang, out of all seven of those candidates on stage, was a person of color. And they gave the question to Yang, and he took it well. He said how he thinks he misses Kamala and Cory, but he thinks Cory will be up there again. And he pointed out the problems that candidates of color face. And then the question was brought to Bernie. Now, I'll grant that Bernie Sanders probably could have worded it in a different way, but at the same time, it was thrown at him so quickly that there was no way he could add the addendum as to why he was bringing it up. So basically, he's asked a question about race, and he brings up how he'd like to go back to the climate change issue.
Right,
And
right.
and I mean, from how well he was prepared he was to bring the details up, I'm assuming he was planning on bringing up how climate change, because climate change was the question right before this one, how
Yeah.
climate change affects people of color disproportionately. But before he could even get to whatever his next point was going to be, the moderator jumps in and says,
Slam dunked on his head, man. Like,
yeah, and just says like, excuse me, we're talking about race here.
with all due respect, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and it's like the crowd roared at that, which really like, come on, like, my God. And it's just like, to go at it like that. I didn't see any other moment even approach that level tonight. It's just like there was something there to it. It was just bizarre.
oh no, no, there most certainly was something there to it, and whew, this is probably where I'm going to lose the audience. But listen, after 2016, I needed Bernie Sanders to be flawless on all questions of race. To that end, I felt like, no, Bernie, don't pivot because you're going to open the, oh, here he comes, slam dunked on his head,
All right.
right? And my policy is to never give people the ammunition they need to shoot you in the face.
Right.
Bernie Sanders in that moment, I don't, and I saw how he tried to pivot back, but you know what? This is politics. This is a debate stage. You don't get a chance to pivot back. You don't get a chance to be nuanced, not after you gave the moderator the chance to alley-oop, LeBron James slam dunk on his head. And that's exactly what everyone who wants to get Bernie Sanders out of the paint, that's the moment they've been waiting for forever. Now, I haven't seen the news tonight. I saw a few minutes on PBS. They didn't recap that moment. But I guarantee you MSNBC is going to run that moment at least tomorrow and on Saturday and definitely on Sunday. And so to my suggestion to the Sanders team is, Bernie, don't just nail it because they're going to take every opportunity that you give them to make a mountain out of a molehill. But then also, man, just answer the goddamn question, get it right. Let's move on. So I was irritated with that. I was irritated mostly because Bernie gave them the opportunity to do that to him. So,
right.
I mean, I'm sure people are going to disagree with me, but that's just how I feel.
No,
So,
I completely agree with you. And if at the very least, people need to understand that there should have been a strategic reason to not, even if that was what he was planning to do. The wording of it gave them the opportunity to so he needed to be better on that point. Absolutely. And the interesting thing to me though is, and this is a slight tangent, but it's something I've noticed again this year, is that he's the only one who I see get hit for being sort of a single issue candidate. Anyone else who's a single issue candidate is sort of like given props for being a single issue candidate. Like, I brought this up last time because a similar thing came up. But what's his name? His name, he dropped out early. He was the climate change candidate, the climate change guy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I forget it. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, him.
Everyone was, oh, he's the climate change guy. Props to him for being the only guy up there who only talks about climate change. I saw some of the very people who would have hit Bernie Sanders for being known as the climate change guy, for calling him like, oh, he's the hot climate change dad or something like that. And it's like, give me a break. If Bernie Sanders was doing his one hits, you'd be like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about that? And it's like, it's just bizarre. It's just a bizarre thing that they always find a reason for him to
Well,
and but he needs to be able to come back from that though, for sure.
I have one last critique of Sanders here, right along the lines of what you said. So here's let me start with a criticism of Andrew Yang, right? So Andrew Yang really is a one-hit wonder. All he has is this freedom dividend. Everything else seems to be, he ran away from Medicare for all. His answer to every question is the freedom dividend. Bernie, to me, like I'm a single issue voter. It's Medicare for all, so I like to hear it anytime he wants to talk about it. But in the answer to the question on trans rights and trans lives, it didn't connect the dots to the question that was a critical question. And in that case, to me, it sounded like a one-hit wonder, like the record was on repeat. So to me, it's like, don't wear it. I need you to have meaningful answers to the most sensitive questions that are asked, because that's what the people are looking for. That's how they connect with you emotionally. And so if all you do is pivot back to like Andrew Yang does, $1,000 freedom dividend is the answer to everything, including our problem with Russia, then that gives them some more ammunition. But more so than the ammunition is that people aren't connecting with you emotionally, because the question was about the lives of trans women being murdered. The answer to trans women being murdered, Bernie, isn't Medicare for all. I'm with you on Medicare for all. I am. Like, let's get that shit. But at the same time, don't give the same answer to especially to a question like that.
Right. Right. So, the interesting thing to me was I think it was him and Warren who were asked that question. And I feel like neither of them really hit the mark. And the funny thing is, I feel like actually Sanders was closer in terms of the issue, but
Oh,
he didn't speak to it though. Like,
and Warren's was empty too. Like, I don't need you to go in the Rose Garden and read the names. I need you
right.
to do something to stop it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly the point. If you're president and you're having to go to the Rose Garden and read off the list of names of every transgender person who died in the past year, then it means you
Stop them from
failed to,
dying.
yeah, you failed to stop them from dying. Like, it's like, come on
Like
now.
she's planning, like we're estimating about 20 deaths next year, so we're gonna get 20 roses for the ceremony next year. No, stop them from dying.
Right, right. But
Good point.
the unfortunate thing is that she's probably gonna get more play for it because people are gonna view it as her speaking directly to the issue
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, though,
Good
is
point.
that
That's an excellent point.
and the truth of the matter is though that Sanders hit the mark better, but he didn't explain it better.
Right.
Medicare for all actually sort of is going to be a huge help in the lives of transgender women, and actually will probably stop a lot of transgender women from dying. Maybe not from being murdered, but certainly from dying for other reasons.
Yes,
Because they'll be able to get treatment. They'll be able to get treatment to help them deal with
that's
their,
true.
their gender dysmorphia or their whatever other issues, depression from dealing with society's constant shitting on them. Like, it's like,
So if the question, and it could be just I'm not remembering the question right, but if the question was about deaths, then I agree with you. You're actually absolutely right. I heard it transferred to me as murders,
right.
and
The,
so
the thing is, though, I
yeah.
don't know what the good answer to that is, because I mean, there really is no good answer. How do you stop that? And
I mean,
my
in,
only
in
answer
that
would be to
case,
support
then
them full blown, and that's how that's where
that's
supporting their
where
transitioning in, and
so then maybe Warren's answer wasn't the worst, because how do you address the maybe it's the bigotry, the underlying bigotry, and maybe we're not qualified to answer that, so we'll
right.
just
It's one of those issues where it's sort of like like
I-
how do you stop racism? I mean, you do things to put everybody on a more level playing field. You make sure the criminal justice system is not coming down harder on black men and black women and Latinos and Latinas and people of color. But at the end of the day, the real issue is that society is racist, and
and and I do want to just say, I just want to say for the audience, we're thinking these things out loud,
right,
right? Like, I don't, because my first instinct was then that Warren didn't answer the question good. But as we think about this out loud, if it is a humanity issue, right? If it's an issue of treating somebody and viewing them through the lens of humanity, then maybe I have to take back what I said. Maybe that presentation in the Rose Garden emphasizing the value of their lives would be a contribution. Now, don't get me wrong, Republicans will find a way, conservatives will find
right.
a way to make that even worse. But for somebody, they'll tap in and they'll see that humanity. So I'm sorry, I'm just saying, like, thinking out loud, I actually might want to change my opinion on what Warren said, because if it's a humanity issue, then the more we humanize every marginalized community, then the better chance they have of survival.
Right. No, my criticism of Warren for that issue is that, there's so many more ways you could do that. Like, I know there's that whole,
It's true.
there's a whole, there's a whole movement that when this happens, say their name. And that's
Yeah,
probably where she was taking it from. But sort of the point is that when you're president of the United States,
you
this
could
is
do
just my view,
more.
you could do more. And yes,
Yeah.
saying their name is certainly part of it. But I would say, saying their name in terms of just every day talking every day, like my criticism isn't her just saying their name in the Rose Garden. It's the fact that at the end of the year she goes into the Rose Garden and says their name every, it's,
I mean,
I'm not sure.
it does strike me as strange.
Yeah, it's just and again, her heart seems to be in the right place. This isn't like, some Republican or some centrist Democrat saying something, but it just, as president of the United States, you have the bully pulpit,
Yeah.
and you can basically use that to hold up these transgender people who are fighting the fight every day. You can do this and help them, to the ones who are living while they're alive, to stop these deaths from occurring. And I understand it's a great thing to also say that we're not going to forget the people who died in the past year. I get where she was coming at, but I think overall it just came off sort of odd as the first thing she would mention.
I honestly, I'm going to ask my audience tomorrow, and I want to know what like I want to know how that was interpreted by members of the trans community. You know what I mean? I have my take, and I'm thinking about it, but I mean, it could have came off. It might have hit the right notes for some people. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe they felt the same way we did. Maybe they felt like it was just platitudes.
Right.
So we'll see.
I don't even think it was just platitudes. I think it was something that came from Warren's heart that I sort of feel like, again, Sanders didn't answer the question with Medicare for all, but my overall feeling is that, Medicare for all will save transgender lives without a doubt.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Will changing the discussion around trans people help save lives? Absolutely as well. Will that specific scenario Warren mentioned do anything? Probably less than both of those things we mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to who I think does not belong on that stage for sure after tonight of those 7 people. And that is Tom Steyer. Time to get the fuck off the stage, brother. I mean, just a pointless, everything. The most funniest thing to me was the dude went up there and tried to pretend that he invented impeachment. I mean, he was like, I was the first person to call for Donald Trump to be impeached 2 years ago. It's like, whoa, well, whoop-de-doo.
What's weird though, I agree. Like if we're cutting down the stage, he's the first to go. I think Yang and Klobuchar are a close second and third. But Steyer is, who's supporting this guy? I know financially he's supporting himself, right? But at the same time, like where is he getting the points that he's getting in the polling? Like I like what he says. I like his emphasis on the environment. And I like his language on corporate greed. The problem is he also slides in this language of I can outdo Trump on the economy. Which one is it? Because what are you going to say? Like he has never specified what he's going to do on the economy. And he just says, I could beat Trump on the economy. Well, if you're coming with the same neoliberal economic policies that got us here in the first place, then what you're saying about corporate greed doesn't mean shit. You know what I mean? So he's got a little game that he's playing there, even though he tries to come off as really honest. I'm not buying it.
Right. He's going to go on stage and he's going to try something completely different, Ben. He's going to go on stage and he's going to say, I'm a real billionaire and Donald Trump is the fake billionaire. Something that's never been done before. Certainly wasn't an attack that was tried over and over again in 2016 and failed miserably. Because I mean, that's sort of like I don't know how else to interpret that. He knows how to go after Trump because he's a businessman. What are you gonna? I don't like. The only argument I could possibly comprehend is that you would argue that you're a better businessman. And that's not going to play with the crowd that people are worried are going to go for Trump again, who usually don't go Republican, or more importantly, the people who are going to go, screw this, I don't like either of these guys, I'm staying home.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, that's a guarantee. Like Tom Steyer would be I think he would be the most he would cause the most disenfranchisement, period. Like people would self-disenfranchise in a minute. They would refuse to participate because of Steyer. Donald Trump would certainly win. Amy Klobuchar, I think she's just, her comedy. Oh my God, her jokes. I want to shoot myself in the face every time she tells one of her jokes, but she just can't get enough of telling those damn jokes. But she needs to get off that stage. Andrew Yang, like he's novel, right? He's novel in his approach. He's novel in that he doesn't wear a tie. He's novel in that he's like he sprays whipped cream in the mouths of interns and shit like that. But at the end of the day, it's like he's he's a distraction that's pulling away from a certain. There's a certain percentage of his base that would support Bernie Sanders, and so that's why I think he needs to go. And my mind is escaping me. Like, I mean, obviously the biggest ones that I feel don't need to be there, but they're going to be there for a while. Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg. But I'm absolutely with you. Like, at the next debate, if Steyer's on that stage, there is no justice in the universe.
Right, right. And, the unfortunate thing is I saw a poll that shows Steyer moving on up, actually, and, like, he's got, like, 10% now. It's
Like, who's supporting this
yeah,
dude?
right. I don't know who, why this guy's spending so much money on online advertising and TV ads. His whole shtick is basically selling anti-Trump merch that barely even says his name on it. I think there's a percentage of people out there who just are bombarded with this shit, and they must just see his shit, and they go, oh, this guy must really be the guy out there who's the most anti-Trump, because I'm not seeing this from anybody else. And, they're just they're not in the political bubble, so they go, yeah, I like Steyer, but they're not really, if any candidate has, like, the least base that is strong with their candidate, it's him, obviously.
Steyer,
yeah.
for sure. Sure.
But with I thought Yang had a really strong night tonight, at least in delivery, in overall confidence and charisma. He was personable. He surprised me because the guy honestly has not been a good debater. He has not come across good on the stage. I think he has some. I think he means well. I don't think some people think he's sort of like libertarian plant. I actually think the guy means well. I think he's extremely wrongheaded. I think he doesn't get politics in terms of at least how the modern discourse is. He just doesn't get it. The whole thing of not right, not left, it's forward or whatever he says. It's like, dude, you just don't see what's going on here. It's just wrongheaded as Biden going out there saying he's gonna become friends with all the Republicans once Trump's out of office.
Man.
It's and he tried to walk back that today, and it just still didn't hit the mark. Still.
But he had a great, like, if there's ever a line that I heard Joe Biden shine on, was the fact he was like, listen, if anybody up here has a right to hate the Republicans or Donald Trump, it's me. Because look how he's going after me. Look how he's going after my son, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, but I don't. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Now, it was a great line. I don't know who the hell he's talking to, because Republicans are going to still hate him anyway. And I know that's like 100% what you were saying. But I just thought that showed he had a little bit of spark left to do just a little jujitsu. But that was it. So I just wanted to give him credit for one moment that was shining for me in terms of Joe Biden. He had that one spark.
I felt the same way as you, and I was going to bring that up too, how it was a really strong moment for him until you just said what you said, and now my mind is completely changed. He said that in defense of him saying he's going to somehow be some grand president, the grand negotiator who crosses the aisle, and he'll help the Republicans come back to the middle. And
it sounded good, right?
It sounds, but the idea but then he used, to back himself up for some reason, he said how there's no one on stage Republicans have been hating on more. It's like, it doesn't make any sense now, actually.
But what's crazy, though, check this out. Here's what's crazy, and this is why this game is so ridiculous. You know that. I know that. But that shit almost worked on us. Like, for a split second. For the split second, I was like, yeah. And I was like, no. Right. So that spin is powerful, man.
It's like, he's right. There is no one the Republican Party has been attacking more out of everyone on that stage. And that's why Joe Biden's right when he says that Republicans are going to work with him? What?
That's literally what just happened. And I brought it up, like the same thing happened to you that happened to me. Like, I brought it up like, this is a good moment, but wait a minute, who the hell is he talking to? He's talking to the people. Like, and this is what I don't get about this is the most frustrating thing about Democrats, right? Republicans have proven that they will destroy their own ideas. They will betray their own ideology. They will burn this country to the ground just to beat the Democrats at all costs.
Right.
How do you still think that you could be nice and be reasonable with unreasonable people? I don't get it.
Obama wanted to cut Social Security so he could strike the grand bargain with them and come across as some sort. He wanted his legacy to be that he worked for Republicans. And they basically said, no, we're not doing that, even though we want to do that.
There's nothing they won't betray in order to just win the opposition. And so if you know that, then here's what pissed me off about PBS. One, it was a better debate. We talked about the climate change. Great, they had good follow up questions, but their framing gave too much credence to the Republican Party as rational, reasonable actors. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're setting the entire country up for failure because you're dealing with one group that is intransigent at all costs. They will burn this country to the ground. And they're talking about a civil war. Like they're joking about a third term. Donald Trump literally violates the Constitution anytime he gets an opportunity to. And you're going to validate that by posing right wing framed questions to the Democrats and by insisting that the Democrats not be bold. What are you going to capitulate on? Are you willing to back up? Are you going to be easy with Medicare for all, or are you just going to go hard? Like, that's the framing. And so you're already setting them up to move further to the right instead of saying, well, really just blowing the whole framework out of the ballpark and allowing them to be bold. They didn't want anybody to be bold. They wanted all the Democrats to be tepid. And that's how we got to where we are now.
Right, exactly. It's a great sort of point and let's get into this actually, because we were right before we went live. We had a really quick discussion about the debate, off the air, and you brought up how, you think that there's after tonight, you don't think anyone really made the case as the stronger candidate, which I completely agree with you. And I'd like you to get into that a little bit now that we're on the air, because I think it's a great point that shows that these debates are not really doing their job. All these debates sort of do is they
wearing people down.
Yeah, and it almost is like the origin story of a superhero movie over and over again. It's like they're always feigning shock at like Bernie wants to make sure that there's everyone has health care and there's no private insurance. Yeah, we're how many months into this, and I get that there's people who are jumping into it now, but the new Spider-Man movie didn't start at Uncle Ben dying, because
right.
people will know about that regardless of whether they've seen all the other Spider-Man movies. We're at the point now where it's time to really get into it. It's time to really start talking about these issues in ways that haven't been talked about yet.
Did I lose you?
It's time that people. You're good on my end. Are you all
I'm
right?
here.
All right,
I'm
cool.
Here. Okay. Yeah, I'm back.
It's time that they ask a question to Bernie, and then they ask a question to Warren, and they force the two of them to sort of stake why they're different, because no one's done that on a debate stage.
Right.
You and I know why they're different. Bernie and Warren know why they're different. I appreciate their sort of truce, because I do think the two of them are the best we've got, even though I think Bernie is better. But Warren, and Bernie need to finally put out there for the majority people who aren't in this bubble like you and me why they're different. We need candidates to bring up that Buttigieg's plan for free college views the very wealthy as a family household making more than $100,000, which is complete bullshit, because if you have two parents making $50K and they have 4 kids, they can't afford to send their kids to college. They're not rich. That's just ridiculous. Like it's like, come on. It's like, and they're not doing this. And I do actually think the moderators brought up a little bit of more details about the Buttigieg college thing, but no one went for it. It's like, what's going on here? They're just like repeating the same things at this point. It's time to like change things up. Let's get things moving. Let's get into this primary season mode, and let's show everyone why you guys are different, so we could see who the true strongest candidate is to face Trump.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really great observation that we all just keep showing up for, though. We all just keep turning that goddamn TV on, man, and we watch it and we see the same thing happen over and over again, and we all send the same variation of the same tweets that we send every time. Like, I don't know why we are like that, but I think that's a human nature problem, to be honest with you, because we keep going right back to the same trough of bullshit that they feed us, and we don't get any closer.